I've had horses since I was 25 and bought this horse 2 years ago after my old one was 30 and couldn't live anymore. In the beginning everything was still very average, but over the months a condition has developed that has gotten worse and worse. She was nervous. She was restless. The horse was extremely jumpy at the slightest noise. It was sometimes stormy and knocked people over. She was emaciated and could no longer sleep.
Nervös, sie war unruhig, sie war extrem schreckhaft bei kleinsten Geräuschen. Sie war teilweise stürmisch an der Hand, sie hat Menschen umgerissen, sie ist abgemagert, hat nicht mehr schlafen können.
She was not lying at all and then developed an extreme lack of sleep. It went so far that she collapsed in the paddock in the afternoon out of sheer tiredness.
Nachmittags zum Beispiel auf der Koppel umgefallen ist, aus Müdigkeit.
The horse just fell over and we couldn't find out what was bothering her. The food was fine. She lived in a herd with regular exercise.
Das Futter war in Ordnung, sie war in Herdenhaltung mit regelmäßiger Bewegung und dann hat mir mein Hufschmied
Then my farrier recommended the Alexanderhof to me and that's how we ended up here. The horse was practically unrideable. She bucked me off at last too. I can't remember because then I was passed out. I was then taken to the hospital seriously injured. The horse's condition got worse and worse.
Schwer verletzt, ja.
Dann kam noch dazu, habe ich mir dann noch notiert.
Das Pferd.
Sie hatte dann noch einen starken.
Ja, sie war im schlechten Zustand und hat.
Und ganz am Schluss noch schwere Verletzungen.
She coughed and even seriously injured herself in the paddock and had to go to the veterinary clinic.
Schwer verletzt, musste in die Tierklinik.
Genau, ein Loch im Knie.
Hat Gelenksnerv verletzt.
It was all very dramatic.
Aufschürfungen gehabt, genau. Ziemlich dramatischer Zustand eigentlich.
Ja.
Genau. Der Josef hat es dann empfohlen.
Genau.
Joseph then recommended that to bring her here to the Hoofprotection Competence Center.
Und ja,
I will now briefly describe the first impression I had at the beginning.
das Pferd war wirklich extrem abgemagert.
The horse was really extremely emaciated. She reacted in such panic to the saddle girth as if she would get an electric shock. She reacted extremely violently and uncontrollably to the belt.
Schock. Also das Pferd ist in Panik geraten, wenn sie den Gurt unten gespürt hat, speziell beim ersten Zugurt. Das war ganz heftig.
The muscles were as hard as concrete. The whole horse was like a hard block. At the slightest excitement, she immediately fell into panic mode.
Ist sie eher sofort in einen Panikmodus gefallen. Das heißt, sie war kleiner Schreck und sie war außer sich und kaum mehr.
She was disgusted by being touched no matter where she was touched. That was really tough. We soon discovered as well that the horse was not sleeping and therefore, she often fell just like that during the day.
Am Tag oft eingeknickt.
The first attempts at lunging here were also very wild and violent.
Die waren halt sehr heftig. Das war ein sehr starkes Kugeln.
But then we really started. The first steps were to let the horse rest wherever possible. She was given a large box on the edge of the stable.
Wo immer wir das bieten konnten. Das war auf jeden Fall mal eine Box, eine große Paddock-Box, aber am Rand.
Next to her we placed a calm horse that suited her well.
Boxennachbarin, die dann auch ihre Koppelpartnerin war. Also,
she obviously didn't feel comfortable in a herd. It was more likely to cause stress in her and was therefore avoided.
Nicht günstig.
Optimal für dieses Pferd, weil der Herdenstress dann noch dazu kam oder vielleicht ein Mitauslöser war.
We even covered the window to reduce interference from outside.
In der Nacht und auf der anderen Seite ein bisschen Straßenverkehr ist. Alles, was irgendwie.
Everything that could bring calm was done. Then we started with well-dosed training on the lunge. Fortunately, that was possible despite the injuries. She could walk well and painless movement was possible.
Bewegung war möglich, trotz diesem riesengroßen Lochs, was der im Knie auch gehabt hatte, haben wir es bewegen können. Haben dann dabei.
We have really managed to build up her muscles, especially through heavy feeding. More grain and dried beets were fed.
Dann vor allem Wiesenkops, Rübenschnitzel haben wir dazu gefuttert und Kraftfutter in Getreide- und Müsliform. Das haben wir sehr stark dazu gefüttert. Es war übrigens auch.
It was only possible to train on the lunge because the horse could not be ridden for psychological reasons. That would have been very dangerous. In addition, there was a complete lack of muscles. The saddle would only have been directly on the bones.
Das war einfach nicht möglich. Ja, dann haben wir als
After 3 months we had a good interim result. She had recovered reasonably well in terms of weight. You could tell she was on the right track. The muscles have become loose. All of this through this trusting but thoroughly athletic training. That always means a combination of relaxation and physical activity. It got even better. I had ruled out beforehand that I will ride the horse. I just wanted to train it from the ground and just give a prognosis afterwards. But I will probably not ride this horse because it would be way too dangerous.
Ich kann es trainieren, kann eine Prognose abgeben, aber ich werde es wahrscheinlich nie reiten, viel zu gefährlich.
After 3 months, contrary to expectations, I dared to do it. It worked amazingly well. I then even went off-road in the forest and on dirt roads. But one thing remains very problematic. The horse's psyche was improved but still extremely unstable. We have not yet been able to assign why she kept showing extreme setbacks. Unfortunately, she kept panicking again and again. We couldn't clarify that at the time.
Später festgestellt, Gott sei Dank, das kommt dann gleich noch. Dazwischen habe ich einen dieser
I then had to pay dearly for one of these setbacks. I was also thrown off very violently. Fortunately, everything turned out well. The horse was frightened, jumped to one side and really hunched me over in a high arc. With great luck I was able to land on my feet on the asphalt. That was a serious setback.
Aber es war einer dieser heftigen Rückschläge. Und genau, wir haben vergessen.
We forgot to mention something. Of course, we also had her examined by a veterinarian. 2 things in particular were examined.
Die 2 Standardsachen, die man bei solchen Dingen oft macht, ist Magenuntersuchung.
The stomach and ovaries.
Ja, beides.
All the results of the examination were negative.
Eierstöcke waren in Ordnung, das wird ja auch oft nachgesagt, wenn Stuten sehr hysterisch sind, dass von hier von Magenentzündungen oder Zysten eventuell da Probleme herrühren könnten. Und auch sonst haben wir tierärztlich nichts feststellen können. Wir haben dann
Then we found the big key, I would like to say. During this whole phase, when we added various things to the diet and left them out again, the suspicion arose that it could also be due to the food.
Am Futter liegen, das Urproblem, das eigentliche Urproblem. Und wir haben uns dann dazu entschlossen, weil
the correlation between the horse's nervous condition and the feeding of grain feed was fairly straightforward. You also said you bought the horse and she was only fed hay beforehand. And because she always had too little weight before, it made sense to add concentrated feed. But then you couldn't know that she couldn't take exactly that, and that it even did get worse.
Du konntest ja nicht wissen, dass sie das nicht verträgt, weil es schleichend schlechter und schlechter geworden ist. Bis in einen Zustand.
It never occurred to anyone that it could cause so much stress.
Dass das so viel Stress auslösen kann.
Stress so extrem auslöst, genau, und das Zufüttern das Pferd abmagert. Also das war gar nicht so leicht, ja gar nicht eigentlich zum Rausfinden. Da sind wir hier im Laufe der Zeit eben draufgekommen. Und
from then on everything went uphill. Can I put it that way?
Seit nur Heu.
Yes, since we started feeding hay, everything went better.
Positiv, ja.
Entwicklung, genau. Jo, jetzt?
Now 5 to 6 months have passed and she has been stable for many weeks. Now we have an intermediate state that can be seen quite well.
Jetzt haben wir einen Zwischenzustand, würde ich mal sagen, aber der kann sich schon ganz gut sehen lassen.
I might start again briefly with the, still, negative things.
Wir haben immer noch einen Gurtenzwang.
She is still very sensitive to the saddle girth. However, the problem resolves itself immediately after a short time. We therefore assume that it is not a physical problem but a psychological one. Only the first contact with the belt causes her stress. Therefore, it must not be tied when the belt is closed. You have to do this gradually, very carefully and with feeling. Sometimes she even has no problem with it at all.
Und darum muss das ganz leicht sein. Dann heute war es ja gar nicht mehr, hast du gesagt, gell? Wenn man ganz vorsichtig drauf Rücksicht
Genau,
nimmt,
muss man.
dann
There is good reason to hope that one day this problem will go away completely.
was haben wir? Ja, genau.
And sometimes she still falls asleep during the day and almost falls over. But that doesn't really worry me anymore, because it doesn't affect her life.
Jetzt eine Nebenerscheinung noch nicht, die ist unoptimal, aber
Für die Rittigkeit scheint.
That is certainly not ideal, but it is no longer really tragic either.
was wird
What we have now really achieved is the following. We have built up good muscles. This can of course go on, but the basic state is now definitely in the green range. Of course, everything still has to evolve. For example, there is a lack of neck muscles. But you know that this takes anyway longer to build.
Aber das weiß man, das ist eine längerfristige Sache. Aber alles, was Kruppmuskulatur, Oberschenkel, Brustbereich, ist eigentlich in einem guten Zustand.
She is already able to carry herself well in a certain collection without any problems.
Für mich ganz fein ist, oder was mich sehr freut.
Fair is one thing I'm particularly happy about. She endures touch quite calmly again. The video shows that she is now very good at accepting what was previously unbearable for her.
Mal zeigt, dass man das Pferd jetzt überall berühren kann, was vorher Katastrophe war. Ganz toll ist der Schweif.
It is particularly worth mentioning that the tail is very loose and easy to move.
Runter einzugreifen, du hast das Gefühl gehabt, das brechen die Finger ab. Und jetzt kann man den ganz locker anheben. Das athletische
Athletic lunging has paid off wonderfully.
Man sieht hier, ich blende da auch hier einige Videos dazu ein. Das ist sehr.
The horse runs very, very easily. She is very calm. She can also transform her looseness in a light, carried posture.
Versammlung mitnehmen kann. Genau. Und
above all, and that's what it's ultimately about, we want to have a healthy riding horse.
ein Reitpferd haben.
Ja.
Du möchtest ja kein Handarbeitspferd haben. Und jetzt kannst du vielleicht sagen, wir haben heute ein paar Aufnahmen gemacht. Wie fühlt sich jetzt für
Margareta, please tell us how riding feels for you now.
gut reitbar? Was sprichst du?
Ja, wenn ich sie jetzt reite.
Yes, when I ride her now, she's focused on me. She's not distracted about every little thing. She works with you and you get the feeling that she enjoys it. She is soft in the mouth and responds well to the aids.
Sie arbeitet gerne mit einem. Sie ist weich im Maul. Sie reagiert auf die Hilfen gut. Und es ist ein.
It is now a great pleasure.
So, ja.
Macht für uns alle großen Sinn.
That makes a lot of sense to us all. We were lucky that we found the keys. In any case, one of the keys was to fully listen to the horse, to listen and to look. It was important to use horse sense and experience to shape everything around the horse in such a way that it suited her.
Die Haltung so zu gestalten, dass es fürs Pferd passt. Was braucht das Pferd? Fütterung war ein mittellanger Weg.
Finding the key to feeding was a long way. Good veterinary care was also one of the foundations for this. I would like to repeat once more the importance of athletic lunging. The advantage of this way of lunging is that you can train even a convalescent horse well, even if you cannot ride it. In addition to exercising, you can build a good relationship and trust at the same time. You can do it all in one go. That's the great thing about this work. In this case, we have prepared our horse muscularly so that the first ride was not a problem.
Genau, und dann das Pferd muskulär so vorzubereiten, dass das erste Reiten dann gar kein Problem war, weil genug Muskulatur da war. Was wir sicher noch wissen,
it is not yet certain whether you want to keep the horse or maybe sell it. You know I would recommend you keep it. It's better not to give a good horse. Personally, I would be sorry about that. Either way, the future owner should definitely fall back on these experiences. But then he will have a lot of fun with the horse.
die Besitzerin wird auf diese Erfahrungen unbedingt gut Bedacht nehmen müssen, aber dann sicher
Viel Freude haben.
große Freude am
Yes, that was our story now. Marguerite, thank you very much for your trust.
für dein
Gerne,
Vertrauen,
ja.
weil das haben wir manchmal
You're welcome. It really took a long time.
Dinge auch
Ja,
in
es
die
hat
Wege
schon
geleitet, genau,
Zeit gebraucht auch.
genau, um auch für dein Verständnis.
Thanks also for your patience. It was admirable. It was also a considerable financial outlay.
Ein unerheblicher finanzieller Aufwand, den du da jetzt betrieben hast, aber
Aber wenn es sich lohnt,
But it was really worth it.
vielen Dank, Margarete.
ja, ich.
Thank you for the interview.